Visited honorable members. Honorable members, may we give a couple of minutes to other members to take their seat? Is a presenter here? Is a presenter?
I don't know.
We don't present. Which one is elected?
The next one is women.
Is she here? Who is the presenter? Is she around? Yeah. No, you take your seat because Good afternoon, honorable members. Now we'll resume our session, our meeting. May I ask Madam Clerk to give us a third order of the day.
Honorable President, the third order of the day is presentation and debate on the report on the participation of the PAP Women Caucus at the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 70. The presenter is Honorable Aisha Adams, the first Vice President of the Women's Caucus. The second part of the presentation is a presentation and debate on the report of the high-level parliamentary dialogue on the ratification, domestication, and accountability of the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD. The presenter is Honorable Aisha Adams, first Vice President, Women's Caucus. Submit.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I invite Honorable Aisha to come forward to the podium and make your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and allow me to write on the protocols already established. As already stated by the clerk, that I have two presentations, and I will start with the summary of the report on the participation of the Pan-African Parliamentary Women's Caucus delegation at the 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 70. Mr. President, honorable members, it is my distinct honor on behalf of the Pan-African Parliament Women Caucus to present the executive summary of our report on the participation of the Women's Caucus delegation at the 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women held at the United Nations headquarters in New York from 9th to 19th March 2026. The delegation was led by our former president of the caucus, Honorable Amina Tajani. This year's commission carried particular significance. 30 years after the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the international community gathered not merely to reflect on progress achieved, but to determine how we accelerate implementation of our commitments to women and girls. For Africa, this moment was specifically historic. It followed the adoption by the African Union Assembly of the African Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, a landmark legal instrument that now calls upon all our member states and parliaments to demonstrate leadership through ratification, domestication, and effective implementation. The Women's Caucus, therefore, participated in CSW 70 with a clear purpose: to ensure that Africa's parliament voice contributes meaningfully to shaping global discourse while advancing our own continental priorities. Mr. President, honorable members, the mission of the Women's Caucus was guided by three strategic objectives. First, to strengthen the visibility and influence of the Pan-African Parliament within global discussions on gender equality, women's rights, justice, and accountable governance. Second, to deepen strategic partnerships with African Union institutions, regional organizations, international parliamentary bodies, and development partners. Third, to position the Pan-African Parliament as a leading parliamentary institution supporting the implementation of continental commitments on women's rights and gender equality. I am pleased to report that these objectives were successfully achieved. Mr. President, allow me to share 5 strategic outcomes that emerged from the mission. The first outcome is the growing leadership of the Pan-African Parliament within continental and global gender governance. Throughout the session, the Women Caucus actively participated in ministerial meetings, parliamentary forums, thematic dialogues, and bilateral engagements addressing justice, women's political participation, education, economic empowerment, and digital transformation. These engagements strengthened the visibility of the Pan-African Parliament as Africa's continental parliamentary institution and reaffirmed the inseparable role of parliaments in translating international and continental commitments into national legislation, oversight, and public policy. The second outcome was the successful convening of the Pan-African Parliament high-level dialogue. In partnership with AU-CIEFFA and the African Women Leaders Network, the Women's Caucus convened a high-level dialogue on strengthening women's public and parliamentary leadership to advance justice, laws, and accountable governance in Africa. The dialogue brought together parliamentarians, African Union institutions, United Nations agencies, development partners, academia, and civil society to examine how women's leadership can accelerate justice, legislative reform, and accountable governance across our continent. Importantly, the dialogue concluded with the adoption of a joint outcome statement, providing a practical roadmap for future parliamentary action and institutional collaboration. This achievement reaffirmed the Pan-African Parliament growing role as a continental convener of policy dialogue and parliamentary diplomacy. The third outcome concerns the priorities that now require parliamentary leadership. Across our engagements, one message emerged with remarkable consistency. Africa has made considerable progress in developing normative frameworks to project the rights of women and girls. Our challenge is no longer the absence of commitments. Our challenge is implementation. Participants, therefore, called upon parliaments to accelerate the ratification and domestication of the African Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. Strengthening parliamentary oversight, promoting gender-responsive budgeting, combat violence against women in politics, including online violence, and remove the structural barriers that continue to limit women's leadership, access to justice, quality education, and economic empowerment. These priorities closely align with the ongoing work of the Women's Caucus and the Gender Committee, including the domestication of the PAP model law on gender equality and equity, and build upon the Pan-African Parliament's partnership with stakeholders like the UNFPA, AU-CIEFFA, among others, to strengthen parliamentary action towards the elimination of violence against women and girls across Africa. The fourth outcome was the strengthening of strategic partnerships. The Women's Caucus held productive engagements with the African Union Commission, AU-CIEFFA, the Women, Gender and Youth Directorate, AU-CIEFFA, the African Women Leaders Network, the European Parliamentary Commission Parliament Association, the Interparliamentary Union, United Nations agencies, and development partners. These engagements were reaffirmed that advancing women's rights and gender equality requires collective action. No single institution can achieve this agenda alone. Mr. President, as PAP, we are not there to go fast, but we are there to go together and go far. We can hold hands with your neighbors so that we go together very far. Through stronger partnerships, we can mobilize technical experts, legislative innovation, financial resources, and political commitment to accelerate implementation across the continent. The fifth outcome is a renewed roadmap for parliamentary action. Building upon the outcomes of CSW70, the high-level dialogue, and the joint outcome statement, the Women's Caucus has identified clear priorities for the period ahead. These include supporting the ratification and domestication of the African Union Convention, advancing PAP model law on gender equality and equity, promoting gender-responsive legislation and budgeting, strengthening women's political leadership, supporting girls' education, expanding parliamentary oversight, and fostering strategic partnerships with action union institutions, regional economic committees, national parliaments, and development partners. These priorities will guide the future work of the Women Caucus in advancing Africa's gender equality agenda. Mr. President, the mission also demonstrated the value of parliamentary diplomacy. Beyond participating in global discussions, the Women's Caucus positioned the Pan-African Parliament as an institution that contributes practical parliamentary solutions to continental and global challenges. This is the role our citizens expect of us. Not merely to participate in international meetings, but to return with ideas, partnerships, and commitments that improve the lives of African women and girls. In conclusion, Mr. President, 30 years after Beijing, Africa has demonstrated that it possesses the vision, the legal instruments, and the political commitment necessary to advance gender equality. With the adoption of the African Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, our continent has once again shown global leadership. The responsibility that now rests upon us is to ensure that these commitments are translated into laws, institutions, budgets, and measurable improvements in the lives of our people. History will not judge us by the number of declarations we adopt. It will judge us by the laws we enact, the institutions we strengthen, and the lives we transform. The Pan-African Parliament, therefore, has both the opportunity and the responsibility to lead this next chapter of implementation. The Women's Caucus stands ready to work with this House, the African Union Commission, regional economic communities, regional parliaments, United Nations agencies, development partners, civil society, and all stakeholders committed to advancing the rights, dignity, and leadership of African women and girls. The Women Caucus submits the following resolutions made from the participation of the CSW70 for the consideration and adoption of this House. 1. The PAP Women's Caucus report on the participation of the PAP delegation at the CSW70 through their engagement in high-level policy dialogues, parliamentary engagements, bilateral consultations, thematic sessions, and strategic partnership meetings held from 9 to 20th March 2026 in New York, United States in America. Reaffirming the Pan-African Parliament commitment to promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls on the continent, particularly through parliamentary diplomacy and institutional cooperation with member states, regional economic communities, the African Union Commission, African Union Development Agency, New Partnerships for Development, AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD, the African Women Leaders Network, the United Nations, development partners, and international parliamentary institutions. 3, mobilize national parliaments for the use of parliamentary oversight mechanisms to monitor and guarantee member state ratification, domestication, and implementation of the AU-CIEFFA, the Maputo Protocol, and other continental gender equality instruments. 4, develop a continental framework program on women's public and parliamentary leadership in collaboration with AU-CIEFFA and relevant AU organs, and promote institutionalized mentorship, leadership development, and integrational exchange programs for women in politics and public leadership. 5, call on African Union member states to intensify efforts to ratify, domesticate, and implement relevant continental gender equality instruments towards guaranteeing more inclusive societies, and to use the PAP model law as practical tools to align national legislation with their continental commitments. Number 6, encourage member states in their national gender strategies to strongly consider the need to inter alia identify emerging policy priorities, strengthening institutional resources, mobilization, and women's leadership in justice and governance, enhance gender inclusive parliamentary action and oversight, strengthen education, capacity building, and intergenerational leadership. Leverage on digital innovation and technology, and strengthen domestic and international partnerships and cross-sector collaboration to sustain women's public and parliamentary participation. Number 7, which is the last one, is to commend the work of the PAP Women's Caucus in representing the Pan-African Parliament and advancing Africa's parliamentary perspectives on gender equality and the empowerment of the women and girls during the 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW-70, ahead of the United Nations headquarters in New York, United States of America, from 9th to 20th to 19th March 2026, under the theme, the acceleration of the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls by addressing structural and systematic barriers, including through strengthening, financing, institutions, and innovations. Mr. President, the Women's Caucus submits for consideration and adoption of these resolutions, together with the report of the participation of the Pan-African Women Parliamentary Caucus delegation at the 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW-70. Thank you. Mr. President, honorable members, I now go to my second presentation, which is the last one. Don't think I have the third one. On behalf of the Pan-African Women's Caucus, I have the honor to present the report of the high-level parliamentary and multi-stakeholder dialogue on the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, AU-CIEFFA, convened on the margins of the 7th ordinary session of the 60th Parliament. The dialogue brought together members of Pan-African Parliament, representatives of the African Union Commission, United Nations agencies, regional economic communities, national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, academia, and development partners to reflect on the practical strategies for accelerating the signature, ratification, domestication, and implementation of the Convention. The dialogue recognized the adoption of AU-CIEFFA as a landmark achievement for the African Union. As the first legal binding continental instrument dedicated exclusively to ending violence against women and girls, the Convention provides Africa with a comprehensive framework to strengthen prevention, protection, access to justice, and accountability. Participants, however, emphasized that the Convention's success will not be measured by its adoption alone, but its effective implementation and the positive impact it has on the lives of women and girls across the continent. Discussion during the dialogue focused on the 4 strategic areas. First, participants examined the Convention and the Continental Ratification Roadmap, highlighting the urgency of securing the 15th ratification requirement for the Convention to enter into force. Secondly, they considered practical lessons from member states, particularly the Gambia's experience as the first country to ratify the Convention. Can we give a hand to Gambia? A hand of applause, please. Thank you. Demonstrating the importance of sustained political commitment, legislative preparedness, and institutional capacity. Third, the dialogue reaffirmed the central role of parliaments in leading the ratification and domestication process through legislative reform, parliamentary oversight, budgeting allocations, and public accountability. Participants stressed that national parliaments must move beyond ratification by ensuring that adequate laws, policies, resources, and oversight mechanisms are in place to protect women and girls effectively. And finally, participants underscored the importance of building a continental parliamentary and multi-stakeholder accountability and advocacy platform that brings together the Pan-African parliaments, national human rights institutions, United Nations agencies, development partners, civil society organizations, and academia to support implementation, monitor progress, and promote peer learning across member states. The dialogue further highlighted the importance of evidence-based policymaking, strengthened data systems, survivor center services, and inclusive approaches that respond to the needs of women and girls in all their diversity, including women and girls with disabilities, those affected by conflict, refugees, and internally displaced persons. Your Excellency, the dialogue concluded with several important outcomes. These include strengthening parliamentary leadership, accelerating ratification and domestication of the Convention, enhancing parliamentary oversight and accountability, promoting legislative harmonization, building the capacity of parliamentarians, strengthening multi-stakeholder partnerships, advancing evidence-based policymaking, establishing a continental accountability and advocacy platform, mobilizing adequate resources for implementation, and promoting national ownership of the convention. Above all, the dialogue reaffirmed that ending violence against women and girls is a shared continental responsibility that requires sustainable political leadership, coordinated action, and unwavering commitment from the stakeholders. The Pan-African Parliament Women's Caucus, therefore, calls upon this August House to continue championing the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, and to encourage member states to expedite its signature, ratification, domestication, and implementation so that its promise is translated into meaningful protection, justice, and dignity for women and girls across Africa. Honorable members, arising from the deliberations of the high-level parliamentary and multi-stakeholder dialogue, the Women's Caucus respectively submits the following recommendations for the consideration and adoption of this August House. To member states, to urgently sign and ratify the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls in accordance with the Continental Ratification Roadmap in order to facilitate its timely entry into force. 2, allocate adequate and sustainable financial, technical, and human resources to implement the convention. Strengthen prevention programs and provide survivor-centered services, including access to justice, healthy care, psychosocial support, and economic empowerment. To national and regional parliaments, 2, 1, review, enact, and harmonize national legislation, policies, and institution frameworks to ensure full compliance with the convention. 2, use the Pan-African Parliament model law on gender equality and equity as a practical legislative tool to support domestication efforts. 3, reaffirm the central role of parliamentarians in championing the convention through parliamentary diplomacy, legislative advocacy, constituency engagement, and sustained political leadership. 4, urge their parliamentary committees to strengthen oversight of executive implementation through regular reporting, committees inquiries, gender-responsive budgeting, public hearings, and monitoring of national commitments under the convention. 5, support the establishment of the parliamentary community of practice under the auspices of the Pan-African Parliament Women's Caucus to facilitate peer learning, legislative exchange, technical cooperation, and dissemination of good practices among African parliaments. 6, endorse the establishment of a continental parliamentary and multi-stakeholder advocacy platform led by the Women's Caucus of the Pan-African Parliament in collaboration with the African Union Commission, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, regional economic communities, national human rights institutions, civil society, feminist movements, academia, development partners, and the private sector to accelerate the signature, ratification, domestication, implementation, and accountability of the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. And to African Union institutions, 1, establish a multi-stakeholder continental accountability platform, bringing together parliaments, African Union institutions, regional economic communities, national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, the African Union Commission, African Women Leaders Network, UN agencies, national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, traditional and religious leaders, youth organizations, academia, and the private sector. To other stakeholders, including civil society organizations, national statistical institutions, academia, and research institutions. 2, 1, strengthen the collection, analysis, and utilization of sex, age, and disability disaggregated data to inform legislation, policy, and programming. 2, recognize that women's leadership and equal participation in political, economic, and public life are essential to preventing violence against women and girls and advocating inclusive governance and sustainable development. 3, encourage the meaningful participation of young women and men as champions for gender equality, positive social norms, and prevention of violence against women and girls. 4, urge the Women's Caucus, working with the Committee on Gender, Family, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, and relevant partners, to promote the Pan-African Parliament model law on gender equality, and equity as a practical legislative framework to support member states in harmonizing national laws with the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls and other continental gender equality instruments. And finally, call upon the African Union member states, development partners, international financial institutions, and the private sector to support implementation of the convention through sustainable financing, technical assistance, innovation, and strategic partnerships. Mr. President and honorable members, the Women Caucus respectively requests this August House to consider the adoption of these recommendations, together with the report of the high-level parliamentary and multi-stakeholder dialogue, as the position of the Pan-African Parliament on advancing the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. I so submit. Thank you. Asante sana. Shukran jazira. Obrigado. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Honorable Aisha. May we give her a round of applause, please. Honorable members, we have a list of speakers. The first name in my list, Honorable Fatimata Nijai of Gambia. You have the floor, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I shouldn't have even spoken because my first Vice President have said it all. But notwithstanding, I wouldn't hide my disappointment looking at the floor. I was expecting all members to be here to listen to this very important report because, Mr. President, what we are discussing here is not only about women issues. They are issues of human rights, democracy, and development of the future of our continent. We are talking about women. So I think it should have been given much more importance and have all members present here today so that we can also hear from them to see how we can move forward. But notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, Like I have said this morning, our participation was not only an isolated event, it was a strategic engagement, and it had already translated into concrete parliamentary action with what we held here last week, as my colleague had presented. The high-level meeting convened by the Women Caucus on accelerating and ratification of the AU Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. And I would not conclude but congratulate Rwanda, the newest signatory to the convention. And I urge all other members to return back to their respective parliaments and push on their respective governments to not only sign, but to ratify, deposit, so that we can start seeing the implementation. Mr. Speaker, I thank all honorable members here present today because they have shown that they value women and girls. Thank you.
And thank you, Honorable. Next will be Honorable Sarah from Uganda. Honorable, you have the floor. Honorable is not in the chamber. Okay. Honorable Abdrahim Bremi Hamid of Chad.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I don't have much to say, but I will extend my congratulations due to the report which has been supplied, and I approve the report, and we are going to do everything possible at our level in the country so that the ratification should be a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Innocent Sebi Benin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the Vice President of the Women Caucus for the good presentation. Mr. President, as said by my colleague who took the floor before me, the question which concerns women today in Africa should be an important concern, because if it wasn't an issue related to the respect of the quorum rules and the rules of procedure, I have asked that the floor should not have been limited, because the women today are the heart of Africa and are the heart of the development of all countries. To this effect, I would like to say that the convention which was adopted by the AU with regards to the fight against violence made to women is the first complete convention adopted by the African Union. Although my country, Benin, is yet to ratify it, it has made progress with regards to the protection of the women. Benin voted the law 2003/03, which suspends, which bans female genital mutilation, law 215/8 on violence against women, and what is very important, the creation of an Institute of Women, which is a public entity, and which was created since 2021 to protect women and girls against violence, promote their leadership, and strengthen their place in the society. So with this progress being made by Benin, we are delighted for you to understand that Benin is among the countries which have ratified this treaty. Mr. President, to this effect, I would like to invite the colleagues and the distinguished MPs of countries which are yet to ratify to work hard so that in a brief delay it should be ratified. It's to this effect that I would like to urge the Pan-African Parliament to make a recommendation so that a deadline should be fixed because in the report we have seen the delays concerning ratification and the nationalization is slow. There isn't any deadline. So I've wanted that we should make recommendations so that we should set a deadline. For instance, by the end of 2027, all countries should ratify it. Or by the end of 2028, all countries should have ratified, and all countries should domesticate these laws, the provisions of this convention to their national laws, so that microphone.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Honorable Senator Dr. Danson Mungatana of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable President. I take the floor to give the Kenyan experience and statistics on violence against women. Your Excellency, Mr. President, in 2022, the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey found that violence against women was at 16%, reported at 16%, which was a drop that in 2014, there was 20% violence. So there was a drop of about 4%. But somewhere in 2025, this is last year, there was a very large step upwards on femicide cases in Kenya. So many women were being killed. And this prompted demonstrations all over the country. Our women went out and protested at the rates at which our women were being killed. There was even a demand that a new law be made for femicide specifically, not just murder. And the report that came out, which was titled, "She Did Not Die by Accident," in 2025, the femicide report, it said that at least 220 women were reported to have been killed. And Mr. President, these people were not killed by strangers. They were killed by people they know, family people. It will be a husband and a wife. It will be a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Our women were dying. And Mr. Speaker, the report even said that they have found out that the most dangerous place to be for our women was the home. The home, can you imagine? And the other finding was that there were a lot of informal negotiations. When people are being taken to court, traditional mechanism to try and solve those problems come in. And then instead of people being jailed, people are being released, Mr. Speaker. So despite the fact that we have conventions, despite the fact that a lot is being done, we need to go to the ground. And my belief is that we must involve the men. We must go and talk to people, the other gender that is accused of these horrendous activities. We must have campaigns across our nations to raise the awareness. Mr. Speaker, when we had women leadership coming up, the 1/3 gender rule, it was because of the campaigns that were done. People came to appreciate that women can actually lead, and it was finally accepted. And also in this violence against women, Mr. Speaker,
1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Your Excellency. I was just finishing. I was just saying that even in this matter involving the violence against our women, time has come for us to actually do the campaign so that we may shift out of this traditional thinking. Because in some traditions, in parts of our country, people believe that when you beat up a woman, and some of the women even believe that it's a sign of love. So we need to get out of this, We need to have proper campaigns to educate our people so that they actually live to that
Honorable, please
expectation.
resume your seat. Take your seat, Honorable Danson.
Thank you.
Point of order.
I'm really sorry that I have to stand and say this, but when women are beaten, it is not the women that think that is love. It is the men so it's not the women. No woman wants to be beaten. So I want to just correct him that if the men are beating their wives, it's not the women that think that's a way of love. It's the other way around. They think it's love because they dominate the women. Patriarchy in Africa is dead and has to end. That's why we have our own meeting in New York. Where do the men go to meet? We go to New York to meet every year, CSW, to discuss the agenda of women, and we never discuss men.
Honorable Danson.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, for the information of the Honorable Passaris, men also meet. We have the men's conference every year in Nairobi. And there we don't invite women, we also discuss our own things. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, just to accept and agree with what Honorable Passaris is saying, we need actually to educate our people. We need campaigns on the ground. Aside from good documents and good declarations, we need campaigns. We need to inform our people so that we can change our customs and our ways of thinking, that our women, our girls, our children will be safe in our homes. I thank you, Mr. President.
I've given you so much time.
It's good I gave you 1 minute. Yes. The next speaker, Honorable Mariam Dao Gabala of Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear President, dear colleagues, from the onset, I would like to commend the caucus of women for the good quality of the report presented, which is clear and precise. I equally hail the work accomplished by the caucus in order to promote the African Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and equally efforts carried out for its ratification and its domestication in national parliaments. The visibility of the Pan-African Parliament seems to be real, and I support their recommendations and recommendations of the report. Nonetheless, Mr. President, this report makes me to ask an important question which has already been raised in these chambers. The caucuses and committees of the Pan-African Parliament mobilize resources to take part in international organizations and promote a continental and international convention. It's legitimate. But what's the place reserved to the instruments elaborated by our institution, the Pan-African Parliament, and into continental events like the Day of the Pan-African Woman? Mr. President, the Pan-African Parliament has produced a model law, notably the law on the physically disabled persons and that on gender equality. It equally deals with gender-based violence, nefarious practices, participation of women, and responsabilization mechanisms. The United African Conventions and the PAP decisions are not conflictory, but are complementary. The model law offers to national parliaments a tool to translate them or to transpose them into the national laws. I equally believe that partners should accompany the agenda of the Pan-African partners. They shouldn't substitute themselves to the determination of this agenda. Our institution cannot produce important instruments and then stop short from mobilizing resources or monitoring mechanisms for their production, for their promotion and domestication. The first duty of the Pan-African Parliament and its organs should be to carry, defend, and promote the instruments that it adopted itself. So it's urgent that we should have a right budget in order not to depend on the priorities of developmental agencies. So I recommend that caucuses should enshrine in their priorities the promotion and domestication of the model law of equality, equity, and of genders. So you have...
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, we should remain open to partnership, but we should be the masters of our priorities, because an institution which hasn't got its own instruments might not be able to determine its own agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Honorable Abdi Samatar. Professor. Not in the chamber. Okay, next will be Honorable Elizabeth, Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support the report of the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW70, reaffirmed that Africa cannot achieve sustainable development, peace, or prosperity without the full participation and empowerment of women and girls. One of the key messages is that gender-based violence remains a major obstacle to equality. Strong laws must be matched by effective implementation, adequate resources, access to justice, and community engagement. CSW70 also emphasized strengthening women's participation in leadership through lasting constitutional reforms that guarantee equal opportunities in parliament, government, business, and other decision-making spaces. I commend the Republic of Zimbabwe for progress through constitutional provisions on gender balance, the Women's Parliamentary Quota, the National Gender Policy, continued effort to combat gender-based violence, expanded access to girls' education, women's economic empowerment, and increased participation in leadership. As Pan-African parliamentarians, our responsibility is to translate these commitments into effective laws, adequate budgets, and strong oversight that improve the lives of women and girls. In conclusion, Africa has discussed gender equality for many years. The time for action is now. Let us build Africa where every woman and every girl lives free from violence, enjoys equal opportunities, and contributes fully to the development of our continent. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Next speaker will be Honorable Safia Elmi Jibril of Djibouti. Next one will be Honorable Gladys Tosu, Benin. Not in the chamber.
Okay. Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President, for acknowledging me. I would like to congratulate the Women Caucus of this assembly. That is the PAP. And now that I am a new member of this caucus, as I participate for the very first time to their deliberations, I would like to thank them for the quality of the work done regarding the adoption of the convention and their participation to the summit on gender-based violence. I think that these are topics which are very interesting, and considering that a previous speaker, a colleague indeed, mentioned the fact that men are absent in this hall right now, I just feel like we do not consider gender-based violence matters. They are very important because there are many things that happen in Africa in this line. Let's mention the case of Africa, where sometimes we see women leaving one state to the other. I believe that each and every one of us should consider this situation and work towards reducing these gaps that we notice. After hearing the intervention of my colleague Sabio from Benin, I'm not supposed to take the floor. However, I would like to mention that gender-based violence are being criminalized in Benin. There is an act which condemns gender-based violence. Every violence is considered as a crime, so there is a court which is in charge of such matters. He equally talked about the National Institute of Women. It is in charge of files or every gender-based violence act that occurs. So sometimes people do not think it wise to go and report such acts to this institute, and maybe they take the result to other means. This is just to say that we are fully committed, and once we get back to our countries, we will ensure that besides the strides we've noticed or we've had in Benin, we will ensure that this convention is being ratified. And I urge all colleagues to ensure that all states which are yet to ratify this convention do so. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Honorable Almatu Badaru of Benin. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. President. Dear parliamentarians, colleagues, gender-based violence means talking about unshattered dreams as well as fundamental rights which are not respected. These violence, be they psychological, sexual, economical, or symbolic, are not a fatality. They are a collective challenge that requires that we act responsibly. The report presented is a good one and reminds us of the fact that gender-based violence fight is a collective responsibility and imperative for our continent. That is why I would like to commend the significant efforts made by the Republic of Benin during the last years under the impulse of the government. Many laws have been strengthened and adopted in order to combat gender-based violence and to protect victims and sanction those behind these crimes. These strides have shown that there is a political will to guarantee young girls and women a more safe and fair environment. However, we know that the adoption of text is not enough, but considering them actually by populations in an effective manner and the change of attitudes is still a problem. That's why, as a coordinator of the Social Mobilization Department of African Women Leadership Network, I am delighted to announce that this body will carry out an awareness-raising campaign for the ratification of this United Nations Convention. We are working with the civil society organizations, community leaders, youth, and media in order to make this convention a real social transformation tool. Dear colleagues, the best evidence of our leadership does not reside or revolve around the text we adopt, but the way in which we decide to protect the most vulnerable populations. Let's make positive masculinity a strength for human dignity, respect. I call on all member states to accelerate their ratification, the domestication, and the implementation of this convention. Together, let's ensure that no woman or youth lives in a scary environment, and at the eve of the celebration of the International African Women Day, I would like to pay tribute to all these women who were victims of violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Next speaker will be Honorable Esther Passaris of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to support the adoption of this report and commend the Women's Caucus for ensuring that Africa's voice was heard at CSW 70. 30 years after Beijing Declaration, Africa has made progress. More women are in leadership, more girls are in school, and we have stronger continental legal instruments to protect our women and our girls. However, our challenge is no longer the absence of commitment. Our challenge is implementation. We must ensure that the Maputo Protocol, the Africa Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and other gender instruments are ratified, domesticated, adequately funded, enforced, and monitored by every member state. Mr. President, we must also confront the patriarchal system, discriminatory social norms, and gender stereotypes that continue to restrict women's access to education, economic opportunity, political financing, decision-making. These barriers cannot be removed through declarations alone. Our national laws, policies, and budgets must deliberately dismantle them. Sexual gender-based violence remains one of the greatest barriers to women's freedom, dignity, and participation. Survivors need more than sympathy. They need protection, healthcare, safe spaces, access to justice, accountability for perpetrators. We must also confront violence against women in politics because no woman should be intimidated, threatened, or abused for choosing to serve in her country. The report highlights the link between education, justice, leadership, and leadership. Child marriages, adolescent pregnancies, school gender-based violence, and inadequate menstrual health support continue to push girls out of schools. School re-entry policies for adolescent mothers must be implemented so that pregnancy does not become the permanent sentence of a girl's future. The Maputo Protocol must therefore live beyond the speeches. Its principles must be reflected in the services that protect health, dignity, and the rights of women and girls. Mr. President, I also welcome the focus on digital transformation and artificial intelligence. Technology can expand access to justice, public services, and political participation, but it is also exposing women to online violence, cyber harassment, and digital exclusion. We need gender-responsive digital laws that protect women while ensuring they benefit from innovation. Mentorship must also be institutionalized. Experienced women leaders must deliberately prepare the next generation, including young women and women with disability.
Are you okay, Honorable? Okay. The next speaker will be our former President, Honorable Fortune.
Do I get a minute?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mentorship must also be institutionalized. Experienced women leaders must deliberately prepare the next generation, including young women and women with disabilities, to enter politics, influence legislation, and lead public institutions. Let us measure progress not by the number of reports we adopt, but by the budgets we allocate, the laws we enforce, the survivors we protect, the girls we retain in schools, and the women we empower to lead. I thank you. I support the report.
Thank you. Honorable President, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I rise to support this report. When the Women's Conference took place last year, I was in this chamber. This chamber was full to capacity with women across the continent, and they made fundamental recommendations which have been presented this afternoon. And from last year, I was part of the endorsement and the couching of those resolutions. So I stand to reaffirm my support. Mr. President, I did get the good sentiments that this chamber should have done better in terms of numbers, knowing the debate this afternoon. But it would also be interesting the side of women to count who is in the room, how many men and women are in this room, so that there's a risk that there will be more men than women in this chamber. Yes. Then we also call upon women to support themselves, support issues about women. In my language in Zimbabwe, Shona, sometimes we say in Shona, nyakutambikwa gwinyavo. When people are dancing for you, you don't sit and start sleeping. You stand up also and motivate them, join them in the jive that when they are dancing for you. So women, please also stand up for yourselves, so the numbers in this room could actually show that women are not doing very well in supporting themselves. The key issue is implementation, Mr. President, and I agree with the previous speakers. Let's move into implementation and not talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Fatoumata, Honorable Fatoumata. No. Next speaker will be Honorable Lombehai. Not in the chamber. Okay.
Merci, Honorable Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like us to correct the spelling of my name. It's Lohembe Veronique.
Merci.
Thank you, Honorable President, for acknowledging me. Permit me to fulfill my responsibility, which is to commend this research work carried out by the Women Caucus of the PAP. Also, permit me to make available to you some strides noticed in Congo, my beloved country, on this issue. They are as follows: voting to legal instruments that underpin my country's commitments regarding the implementation of this convention and its ratification. These are national laws that contribute to the protection of women and children. Children here refers to the young girl and the young boy. So at this level, we did not exclude men, of course. So we have two laws which were elaborated in Congo-Brazzaville. The first one has to do with the protection of the child. This is a legal instrument that Congo had already voted via a law number 4 of 2010 of June 2010, which lays the fundamental rights of minors, prohibits exploitation, the sales, and child labor. The second law is known as Mwebara. If I have to take you down to history, here it's the name of our president's mother, President Sassou Nguesso. So this law has to do with gender-based violence fight and equally punishes certain actions done in the family, and there is equally an amount to be paid in case these criminal actions are being done.
Une minute,
Une minute.
Monsieur le Président, s'il vous plaît. À ce moment-là, je vais directement au but. Alors, face à cet engagement,
So, with such a commitment, my country's government is committed to carrying out an advocacy, which is going to be carried by our delegation. The aim here is to ensure the ratification of this convention and consequently promote positive local initiatives. So I would like to second this report. Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Honorable Bederi of Rwanda.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for giving me this opportunity. I want to thank the Women Caucus for ably presenting the report, and I support the adoption of the report. I'm taking this opportunity to inform you that Rwanda has become the 9th signatory to the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women. And I believe ratification will follow very soon. Rwanda supports the convention as it aligns with Rwanda's vision and national gender policy. The convention, as we know it, provides a comprehensive continental legal framework to prevent and respond to all forms of violence against women and girls. And on this note, I would wish to take this opportunity to ask member states that have not signed to do so, because it is in the interest of our women and girls that they should be protected by all of us. And finally, I want to say that Rwanda's commitment reflects its strong national vision for advancing gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. And I want to mention here that my country remains one of the leading countries in promoting gender equality globally. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I think we are exhausted with the list. Before that, our second Vice President, Honorable Dr. Senator, she will take floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. I would like to congratulate the Women's Caucus of Pan-African Parliament, especially for continuity of vision in spite of the change in leadership. I would also like to request that a correction be made to my name on page 5. My surname, Ajiman Rawlings. Ajiman does not have a G at the end of it. I would also like to mention the fact that violence against women undermines Africa's peace, security, and development. And in reference to women supporting each other respectfully on any given day, a plenary, the women will always be in the minority because every country is given 5 delegates to attend PAP, and the women tend to be in the minority in these delegations. So I don't think it's a function of women not supporting each other, but rather the fact that by the formula, the women are always in the minority in attending PAP, just for the record. And then also to just point out that the measure of any country's respect for human rights is a measure of how they treat their women, their children, and persons with disability. This can be tangibly measured by the kind of budget allocations that are made and by the legal frameworks that are in place and the political will that follows same. And so I believe that the work that was done in this chamber on last Saturday, plus what was done in New York with the Women's Caucus and other agencies, really goes a long way to ensure that what we're talking about does not just remain on paper, but translates into tangible changes in the lives of our women and girls. I do add my voice to all those who have spoken before, and that this report should be adopted. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Honorable Vice President, honorable members. I think we must congratulate our women who represented the Pan-African Parliament, African women, to United Nations. May we give them a round of applause. Excellencies, protecting our women is protecting our family, protecting ourselves, protecting our future. You see, if you go to any universities, especially I was Googling just to know how many women are in the big universities of the world. Around, now, in average, around 40% academia is occupied by the women, without even support of men. This shows how strong are our women. Without that support, without that encouragement, if they are in that level, if we encourage them, good doctors can come out from women. Good professors, more professors, still we have. Good engineers, good academicians, good scientists we can get out of women. So we need to support our women. We need to support ourselves. Excellencies, the convention should be ratified. And we should champion that one. We should advocate. When we go back home, we should ask our speakers to ask the executive to put that item in their agenda. It should come from the executive to the parliament to be ratified. We don't have direct access. Actually, ministers are coming to every parliament, each and every parliament, to make their report. At that time, why not we ask them, where is that Maputo Protocol? Why is it not ratified? So I think we have access. If we are ready, we stepped up already in past, and also we need to step up more and work to support our women, to ask our head of states, our government to ratify that protocol. Excellencies, we have challenge in quorum still. It will be pending till we'll have quorum to adopt this motion, this report. As you remember, last time also, from even that previous bureau, we have so many resolutions which were not adopted. This, in the morning, I think we had, during our vice president presided over, we had that quorum. Now we don't have. So, Excellencies, may I ask the clerk to assist us. I was advised by our secretariat that will be done tomorrow. Now I will ask the clerk to read the next order of the day.
Honorable President, the fourth order is a presentation and debate on the report of AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD Workshop. The presenter is Honorable Professor Mahamat Yusuf, the rapporteur of the Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism, and Human Resources. Submit.
Honorable Professor Mohammed, you have the floor.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. قبل البداية طبعا هذا تقرير لجنة التعليم والثقافة.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the committee, this is a report of the Committee on Education, Culture, and Tourism. This was actually a workshop that was held from the 20th to the 21st October 2025 between the AU Center for Women's Education and the Association of Women Leaders for Development. Mr. Chair or Mr. President, the report is like 20 pages. I'm not going to read it entirely, given that each of us has this report. I'm just going to read out the main points. If you are okay by this, then I will begin. The Committee on Education, Tourism and Human Resources, accompanied by some members of the Committee on Gender and the Youth Caucuses of the Pan-African Parliament, participated in the high-level policy workshop convened by the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, in collaboration with the Organization of African First Ladies for Development and the UN Women. The conference was held from the 20th to the 21st October 2025 in Dakar, Senegal. The workshop gathered parliamentarians, traditional and religious leaders, civil society organizations, youth representatives, and development partners. The dialogue sought to strengthen continental momentum towards ending child marriage, eliminating gender-based violence, and advancing girls' education as central pillars of Africa's political, social, and economic transformation. The meeting underscored the reality that persistent structural barriers, such as harmful social norms, weak legal enforcement mechanisms, insufficient education financing, and inadequate infrastructure, continue to compromise the rights and future of millions of African girls. The workshop, therefore, served as a platform for policy dialogue, technical reflection, and political recommitment towards ensuring that every African girl has access to safe, equitable, and quality education within conducive environments that allow her to thrive. Aim and objectives. The overall aim of the workshop was to consolidate and strengthen partnerships among AU member states, PAP, AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD, and the civil society stakeholders in advancing girls' education and accelerating the elimination of child marriage across the continent. The workshop further aimed to enhance collective political will, encourage policy coherence, examine legislative gaps, and generate renewed commitments towards integrating gender-responsive approaches into national and regional education systems. Key objectives included the following: to expand continental advocacy for gender-responsive laws and policies in education, highlight the roles of African First Ladies, parliamentarians, and community leaders in creating safer and more inclusive learning environments, to review AU frameworks including CESA 1625, the AU-TVET strategy, and the AU Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, to strengthen knowledge sharing on best practices for ensuring retention, completion, and reintegration of girls within formal and non-formal education systems, to build synergy and support for the African Educate Her campaign as a continental movement.
وشملت كذلك بيانات سياسية رفيعة المستوى وكذلك عروض فنية قدم الخبراء.
So presentations were made in this line by experts. There were equally experience sharing discussion sessions whereby experts presented some cases This was equally followed by some opening remarks from the Education Committee under the guidance of Mr. Welcome, who made a speech which was actually very important on behalf of the PAP Education Committee. He talked about efforts carried out by the African Union concerning societal matters. The chair equally confirmed that a literate child will participate to the development of their family and their country. He also reminded participants that legislative actions are not enough because progress requires cooperation with governments, civil society, teachers, and students' parents. He closed his remarks by encouraging all stakeholders before quitting the conference with and equally mentioned the will to protect women, rather young girls, and build a continent where girls' dreams are being protected. Fifth, the AU Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. The workshop placed significant emphasis on the AU Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, a groundbreaking legal instrument intended to harmonize continent-wide efforts towards ending gender-based violence. Participants discussed the importance of aligning national legislation with the convention and ensuring effective implementation through enforcement mechanisms, gender-responsive budgeting. Also, women leaders, the Executive Secretary of Women's Association, had told participants that the association played an important role throughout this workshop on girls' education and elimination of early marriages. This association equally played an important role in shaping advocacy narratives, leveraging political visibility, and mobilizing community-oriented interventions across member states. Participants acknowledged OAFLAD's long-standing work on maternal health, HIV/AIDS response, child protection, and community sensitization campaigns. The coordinator of the AU-CIEFFA informed the participants that the mandate of the AU-CIEFFA is centered on promoting girls' and women's education and ensuring that gender equality becomes a fundamental component of African education systems. The center offers technical expertise, policy guidance, training, advocacy, and data-driven analysis to support AU member states in the implementation of gender-responsive education programs.
Also, AU-CIEFFA also showcased the utility of its continental dashboard and worked on gender transformative education systems, school safety initiatives, the Africa Educates Her campaign, and the operationalization of continental frameworks such as CESA 16 to 25. Purpose and importance of the Africa Educates Her campaign. Mrs. Simone Yankee, the coordinator of AU-CIEFFA, revealed that the hashtag Africa Educates Her campaign was launched as a response to the educational setbacks faced by girls during crises, including school closures, emergencies, and socioeconomic shocks. Its purpose is to safeguard the right of every girl to learn, lead, and thrive regardless of circumstance. The campaign seeks to re-engage girls who have dropped out of school, enhance advocacy around gender-responsive education systems, address harmful gender norms, and promote inclusive pathways for retention and reintegration. And participants confirmed that Phase 2 focuses on reintegration of out-of-school girls and handling the challenges of young girls in schools to ensure gender equality. It also laid emphasis on the inclusion of girls, strengthening safe and inclusive learning environments, and expanding vocational and digital skills opportunities for young women. Also, enhancing partnerships with First Ladies, traditional leaders, and civil society. The campaign seeks to accelerate policy implementation, ensure adequate education financing, and mobilize continental advocacy to protect every girl's rights to learn, lead, and thrive across Africa. Looking at the role of the Pan-African Parliament in advancing girls' education, Honorable Welcome Dlamini delivered a detailed address on strengthening PAP's involvement in the implementation of the #AfricaEducatesHer campaign. He began by emphasizing that education remains the cornerstone of Africa's transformation, and quoting Nelson Mandela, he underscored that education has the power to transform lives and elevate societies. Honorable Dlamini described the #AfricaEducatesHer campaign as more than a policy instrument. It is a continental movement dedicated to protecting the rights and dignity of every African girl. He emphasized PAP's sacred mandate to ensure that policies adopted at continental level translate into concrete realities in national context. The Pan-African Parliament, he argued, must take a leading role in ensuring the implementation of gender-responsive laws, oversight of budget allocations, and accountability of member states. He outlined several innovative approaches for engaging the Parliament, including institutionalizing PAP's support for girl education through legislative oversight and advocacy processes, integrating the campaign with technical and vocational education to equip young women with employable skills, strengthen partnerships with development agencies, religious and traditional leaders, and media organizations to amplify outreach. More so, reinforcing commitment across member states to monitor national implementation and ensure that every girl has access to quality education. He concluded by urging the Pan-African Parliament to transform the #AfricaEducatesHer campaign into a parliamentary movement that shapes laws, transforms lives, and redefines Africa's educational future. On the Continental Report on the Status of Girls and Women Education in Africa, in a presentation by Mr. Yugbare Boubacar from the AU-CIEFFA, the participants were briefed that girls and women's education in Africa has significantly improved over the past decade, yet major challenges persist. Some of the persistent problems identified included the fact that enrollment in primary education has increased, but completion rates remain low, especially at secondary and tertiary levels. Many girls continue to face barriers such as child marriage, early pregnancy, poverty, gender-based violence, and limited access to safe, inclusive learning environments. In addition, it was noted that rural and conflict-affected regions display the widest disparities. Despite strong continental frameworks and campaigns like #AfricaEducatesHer, progress remains uneven, and no African country has achieved full gender parity in higher education. Sustained political will, investment, and gender-responsive policies are also essential to close the gap. and many countries have been unable to get to equality in education. So, as mentioned, to conclude, the workshop reaffirmed that ending child marriage and promoting girls' education are essential to Africa's pursuit of equality, prosperity, and sustainable development. Participants agreed that while progress has been made, persistent structural, cultural, and financial barriers continue to threaten the realization of these aspirations. The dialogue strengthened cooperation among AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD, the Pan-African Parliament, member states, and civil society, and it also highlighted the need for stronger accountability, improved data systems, and sustained investment in gender-responsive education. The workshop concluded with commitments to strengthen advocacy, mobilize communities, and expand the #AfricaEducatesHer campaign as a tool for continental transformation. Looking at the recommendations, based on extensive discussions and technical exchanges, the following recommendations were adopted. 1. Strengthen and harmonize national legislation to align with AU frameworks protecting the rights of girls and women. 2. Increase national budget allocations for girls' education, ensuring adequate provision for infrastructure, school safety, teacher training, and gender-responsive programs. 3. Promote partnerships with OAFLAD, traditional leaders, religious authorities, civil society, and communities to address harmful social norms fueling child marriage. 4. Enhance evidence-based policymaking by strengthening data collection, monitoring systems, and use of AU-CIEFFA's continental dashboard. 5. Deepen Pan-African Parliament involvement in the #AfricaEducatesHer campaign through legislative reforms, oversight activities, and coordinated parliamentary action across member states. 6. Support reintegration programs for adolescent mothers and girls affected by conflict, displacement, or disability. 7. Expand advocacy and communication strategies to raise awareness on the importance of girls' education and to counteract gender-based discrimination. Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor, and thank you for your keen attention.
Thank you, Honorable, for the report. May I ask you to give His Excellency a round of applause, please? I have a list of speakers here. Honorable Senator Danson Mungatana, you have the floor.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Rais.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to give my opinion regarding this report, which was presented before us. Honorable President, there is a problem in Africa regarding the marriage or to have these small children in marriage. And this problem is very wide. And I'm very happy because in this report, it was well articulated. The last page, they talked about that they recommended that you have a good relation with a partnership and to work together with the first ladies, different leaders, traditional leaders, religious leaders and civil societies to work together so that we can fight against early marriage. So the other problem is that in different societies and in the different opinion of people and some culture, there are some people who think that and who believe that a small child one, she is ready, reaching her first period. It's ready for her to get married. But in Kenya, for example, she cannot get married before reaching 18 years old. So there is a problem between to understand the values of traditional values, and this issue is a problem because other people are afraid of talking about it because in terms of politics, people are not ready. If, for example, the issue of excision, we have the law, but some people are afraid of talking the reality, speaking about the reality. So what we have here, we need, as leaders of Africa, we need to raise our voices and educate the society. So we have to emphasize on this and to go to our different corners of and tell people that the world has changed, especially it's not good in different cities, but in the rural area, there where we find this kind of practices.
Now, Honorable Elizabeth Masuku of Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to support the report of the AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD Workshop because education remains the most powerful investment we can make in Africa's future. When we educate a girl, we empower a family, strengthen communities, and accelerate the achievement of Agenda 2063. This report rightly highlights that too many girls still face barriers such as poverty, child marriage, teenage pregnancy, and unequal access to education, particularly in rural communities. Our responsibility as parliamentarians is to ensure that our commitments are translated into laws, budgets, and measurable action. Mr. President, I'll go back to Zimbabwe. In my country, Zimbabwe has demonstrated its commitment through the school re-entry policy for young mothers, the Basic Education Assistant Module, BEAM, expansion of school in undeserved areas, and programs promoting menstrual health, cervical cancer awareness, and the prevention of child marriages. However, no single country can achieve this alone. We must strengthen collaboration among AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD, national parliaments, governments, and communities so that every African girl has equal access to quality education. Mr. President, let us move beyond commitments to implementation. Let us invest in Africa girls because the education of our girl today is the foundation of a stronger, more prosperous, and more united Africa. My thanks goes to our Africa First Ladies by supporting this initiative. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Next speaker will be Honorable Apimore Chidiziva of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, President, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, distinguished colleagues. I rise to commend AU-CIEFFA-OAFLAD and our committee for this timely report. It reminds us that the future of Africa depends on the investments we make in our girls today. When we educate a girl, we strengthen families, build resilient communities, and secure the future prosperity of our continent. Yet millions of African girls continue to face barriers to education because of child marriage, poverty, gender-based violence, and harmful cultural practices. Our responsibility is to transform our commitments into effective legislation, adequate financing, and measurable action. Mr. President, I wish to commend the work of OAFLAD under the leadership of the First Ladies, and particularly focus on Zimbabwe, the Excellence Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa, First Lady of the Republic of Zimbabwe and the former Pan-African Parliament member. Through the Angel of Hope Foundation and other national initiatives, she has championed girls' education, maternal and child health, nutrition, women's economic empowerment, and the fight against child marriage and gender-based violence. Zimbabwe has also strengthened legal protection against child marriage and continues to expand opportunities for girls through initiatives such as the TAGO, Transforming Adolescent Girls' Opportunities, through STEM project. Your leadership demonstrates how those who have served in this August Parliament continue to advance the aspirations of Agenda 2063 beyond this chamber. Africa cannot achieve Agenda 2063 while millions of its girls remain excluded from education. Let us move beyond declaration to decisive action by strengthening our laws, investing in quality education, protecting every girl from harmful practice, and ensuring that no child is left behind. If we educate a girl today, we secure Africa tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. The next speaker will be Honorable Abdurrahim Bereme Hamid of Chad.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. President. I had to take the floor third on the list before me. Nevertheless, I'd like to second this report. It was properly prepared. I'd like to commend the work. However, I think it's important to note that for girls in the rural areas, it is vital to consider two major aspects. First, we have water points, among others. There is a grinding mill, and a water point. And this prevents girls from going to school. I think we need to include that in providing solutions so girls are not left out of education. Also, talking about my country, since 2014, I was one of the spearheads of one of the laws which stated that marriage should not be organized for children below 18, and we need to engage traditional and religious authorities. I equally think it's important to make recommendations when it comes to refugee camps. I'd like to inform you that with the Higher Education Examination Office, there was a young lady who was the first in the entrance exam for high school in Chad. Also, I think it's important to note that the first student in a country is generally the women and the girls. I think we need a prize for such young ladies to encourage them to further education beyond secondary school and push through with university studies. I believe the Pan-African Parliament can take initiatives in this light. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Now, Honorable Esther Passaris.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to support the adoption of this report and commend the Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism, and Human Resource for its participation in the workshop convened by the Africa Union, International Center for Girls and Women Education in Africa, together with the Organization of African First Ladies for Development and UN Women. The report acknowledges the progress Africa has made in enrolling more girls in schools. However, enrollment is not enough. Too many girls still fail to complete secondary and tertiary education because of poverty, child marriage, early pregnancies, gender-based violence, harmful social norms, and unsafe learning environment. These challenges are even greater for girls in rural areas, conflict-affected communities, and displacement camps, as well as girls with disability. Mr. President, educating a girl transforms more than one's life. It strengthens a family, a community, and the entire nation. Girls' education must therefore be treated as an investment in Africa's human capital and economic future. I welcome the emphasis of the Africa Union Convention on the elimination of violence against women and girls. However, conventions must be domesticated, adequately funded, and enforced. Survivors need protection, healthcare, safe spaces, access to justice, and accountability for perpetrators. I also welcome phase 2 of the Africa Educates Her campaign, particularly its focus on returning out-of-school girls to education. Adolescents' pregnancies must not become a permanent sentence against a girl's future. Effective school re-entry programs must be implemented alongside menstrual health support and safe, inclusive learning environments. The emphasis on vocational and digital skills is equally important. Not every girl will follow the same educational pathway, but every girl deserves the skills, opportunities, and necessary to learn and to earn an income and live with dignity. Mr. President, Parliament has direct responsibility. We pass laws, approve budgets, and exercise oversight. Member states should transform reports on their allocations for girls, education, school safety, teacher training, and gender-responsive programs. The Continental Dashboard must help us identify progress, expose gaps, and hold governments accountable. Let us transform Africa Educates Her from a campaign into a continental parliamentary movement, one that shapes laws, scrutinizes budgets, and protects the right of every African girl to learn, lead, and thrive. I support the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Passaris. Next speaker in my list, Honorable Margaret from Kenya. Not in the chamber? Okay, the last speaker will be Honorable Fatimatu, Dr. Fatimatu. Not in the chamber. Okay, now I will ask the Professor, Committee Rapporteur, to respond to the interventions of the members. Honorable, you have the floor.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. أغلبية الإخوة النواب أتوا بمقدمات وتصويبات لهذه الورشة ولهذه التصويبات. أنا أعتقد بأن الآن نحن وصلنا مرحلة كنواب في البرلمانات الوطنية وحتى في البرلمان الإفريقي.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Is English interpretation? Is the interpretation? I was saying we as a member of parliament in the Pan-African Parliament and on the level of the national parliament, we have reached a maturity phase, and and consolidated our views. The education of girls is clear to everyone, and we see that all the who submit interventions, they commended the workshop and how these recommendations could be implemented. So they focused that we as parliamentarians must launch a campaign to sensitize, because it doesn't cost a lot, and we can use media. And as Honorable Abdurrahim said, that we should also think about the rural girls, like providing very simple, basic things like water points, and that would help them, and the school that is close to their residence. We as parliamentarians, we can contribute to that. Of course, there is progress, but the challenges are many. We hope that we will be successful in the future to educate girls in the future. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Well, may we give him a round of applause, please. Honorable members, our secretariat, we had very productive and fruitful deliberations. Yes, the African girls' educational issue should be priority. We also equally commend our First Ladies of Africa, who are taking care of our children especially abandoned on the street, to reintegrate them with family, with supporters, to send them to school is not easy task. And we all know how many street boys, girls are in Africa. It should be our task to help them, to support them, to send them back to the school, not only to school, to give them shelter, to send them, to reintegrate them with family. It's very important. Early marriage also distracting the educational process. That should be also condemned in the strongest possible way. Excellencies, dear parliamentarians, the AU, our head of states, they are passing so many resolutions. They are adapting. That one should be also ratified and be implemented to support our girls and women in Africa. Excellencies, I think we have taken note of all that deliberations. When we go back, we will engage all parliamentarians of respective countries, our speakers, to bring to agenda of the respective countries, national parliament. There is no way that we can leave behind women and girls, and we can move alone. No way. Our future is not possible with our girls. It's not possible with our women. We can't see our future without them. Excellencies, with this few remarks, I will ask our clerk if she has some housekeeping announcement. We're done. I was advised by the Secretariat to seek for your indulgence to come early in the morning to constitute quorum and adopt all these resolutions and reports, which was already debated and should be adopted. So, honorable members, you are expected to be here 15 minutes to 9, and then we will start our job on time. Madam Clerk, you have announcement? No. So, Excellencies, honorable members, this House stands adjourned up to tomorrow 9 a.m. I thank you.